Hello and welcome to our analysis of iCAT17. You would have already taken a lot of our first 16 mocks that have been released so far. iCAT17 is now in the last part of the mocks that we have prepared on an all India basis as part of our 25 mock package. By this time you would have a clear idea as to what your strengths, weaknesses are, how to approach each section, etc. So this analysis or the short analysis of this mock is intended to help you identify the questions that would have maximized your score in this mock and what should your attempt strategy have been. Well, so how was this mock? Firstly, it was rated as a moderately difficult mock with an average LOD of 1.96, which means an average LOD of nearly 2. What does that mean in the first place? We have a difficulty level of 1, 2 or 3 assigned to each question, ranging from easy to moderate to difficult in that order. So that defines the LOD of a question, section or mock. Having said that, this mock was moderate with 1.96. Let's look at the first section, verbal. Again, a moderately difficult section with an exact average LOD of 2. So this implies that it was slightly more difficult than what you would see in the actual exam. In the actual exam, when we've taken out the LODs of each question, we've seen it comes to close to 1.9, 1.95. So I can say it's marginally difficult. How many questions should I have attempted in verbal? Let's look. As always, verbal here had 6 RCs divided into 2 chunks. One, 2 sets of 6 questions each. The other 4 sets of 3 questions each. Which are the ones that I should have attempted? Now, if you look at this particular mock, you would see that there was no single RC which could be classified as either easy or easy to moderate. What that does is that it makes your question selection in terms of the moderate RCs very crucial. If I see the classification of all the RCs out here, there were 4 moderate RCs and 2 moderate to tough RCs. In such a case, I would look at the subject matter areas and then see which are the ones that interest me the most or which are the ones that are easier for me to read. So for example, what were these areas? One was modern conspiracy theories, capitalism, American art, Buddhist spirituality, nationalism and medieval Europe. So if you look at it, everything was very heavy and dense to read. There was no light topic of current affairs. So even if there was some aspect of current affairs, they were in very heavy topics. So here you would have to look at topics that interest you. In terms of pure difficulty level, which were the easier RCs? I would say there were 4 RCs. One, the longer 6 question RC on Buddhist spirituality, and the remaining 3 question RCs on capitalism, nationalism and medieval Europe were relatively doable. Whereas the other 2 RCs, the 6 question RC on American art and the 3 question RC on conspiracy theories, were tougher than the other RCs, tending towards the tough side. So how should I have attempted this mock? I should have probably tried one of the 2 6 question RCs and 1 or 2 questions here and there from the other 3 question RCs, trying to reach somewhere around 11 to 12 attempts in the RCs. Anywhere close to 10 to 12 attempts in the RCs would have been reasonably good as far as this particular mock was concerned. Let's look at the 10 non-MCQ TETA questions or numerical entry questions. As always, these were a mix of para-jumbles, para-summary and contextual odd man out. Now, sometimes it does happen that the RCs are not so easy, but this part is easy. In this case, that was not the case because everything was tough here. Everything was moderate to tough. So there were no free lunches or easy questions as far as the non-RCs were concerned. So broadly, what I would have got was 11 to 12 questions in the RCs and 1 to 2 questions in the non-RCs. In general, 14 attempts would be a very good performance as far as this particular section of the mock is concerned. Let's move on to DILR, typically the toughest section in the exam as well as this mock. Here DILR was classified as a moderate section with an average LOD of close to 2.1. In the exam what you will encounter is an average LOD of 2.2 or 2.25. So this was reasonably simpler. Of course I won't say it was simple. Understand this, it was relatively simpler compared to the actual exam, but not simple on an absolute basis. Typically we tell students to attempt 4 to 5 sets, that's anywhere between 16 to 20 questions. Normally when this LOD is close to the 2.1, 2.05 mark, I am sure people can attempt somewhere around 18 questions, which means 4 full sets and something else, or 3 full sets and 2 half sets. Here the key is to identify which were the top 3 or 4 sets. Let's do that first. So there was one pretty straightforward set on Venn diagrams based on 3 games, framed in a standard Venn diagram manner, so this is something you should have definitely attempted. Then there was a slightly logical set which was a bar graph in difference in the marks of 10 students. This looked difficult initially, but if you found the hang of it, it was an extremely easy set. You had to do some linear equation based calculations and you would have got the entire set. Then there was a third set which again looked slightly tricky, which was the one on a critical path based on 5 semesters in maths and English. It looked tricky because of the conditional questions and the longish questions, but probably in terms of pure complexity, it was among the easiest sets of this mock. And finally there was one set on a hockey tournament where there was some missing data and you had to find the final rankings for the team. A slightly lengthy set, but one of those typical sets where if you fill up the entire table, you can answer all the questions for that particular mock. For that particular set. So these were the 4 sets that I would have targeted in the exam had I been a student. Apart from this, there were 2 other sets which you could have potentially solved. Why do I mention these 2 sets? So that if you struggled in the 4 that I mentioned earlier, you can try out these 2. One was on multiple pie chart based set on savings of 4 families. Here the problem was that the data was easy, but in each question there was some new data coming in and some new condition coming in. So you had to keep solving it again and again. But yes, this could have been done had you not been able to solve the other things. Then there was one set where you had 2 tables based on pens, ink pen, gel pen, etc. Again required some understanding. Had you been struggling with the other sets, you could have tried this. I would have kept these 2 sets as a backup. In general, I would have tried 4 full sets and 1 or 2 other sets. Number of good attempts according to me here would have been 18 to 19, going more towards 19. Finally, let's move on to the easiest section of this mock as well of actual CAT, quant. So, in this mock, quant had an average LOD of 1.8 more or less, which is very similar to what you would have in the actual exam. How many questions should you attempt here? Unlike XAT, which is very tough, in quant you will always have 10 to 12 easy questions. With this kind of an LOD, I would say anywhere between 16 to 19 attempts is always good. But let's look at this paper and see what were the easy questions. If you look at the easy questions here, you will notice that there was a very clear trend that I can easily see 3 questions from arithmetic and easily 4 questions from geometry, which were part of the top 12 or 13 questions that I would have attempted. So 7 questions out of 12 were from just these 2 areas. So I would have tried and targeted these 2 areas. Secondly, if I observe, there is a clear trend in terms of placement of these questions. If I see questions between the question number 70 and 80, I have nearly 5 questions spread alternately which are easy. Similarly, between questions 80 and 90 and from 94 to 96, I have a bunch of 3 consecutive easy questions. So the key in the exam is always to search for these easy questions rather than go sequentially. Here the trend is not so obvious. Certain other papers it is very clear. But broadly these 12 questions followed by some of the other easy to moderate or moderate questions would have given you a good percentile while enabling you to clear the cutoff. 17 attempts is what I would target here. On the whole, I would say this paper was on the lines of CAT with a marginally tougher English section, marginally easier DILR section, and at par quant section. The overall number of good attempts as per our analysis would be nearly 50. So 49 to 51 attempts would be good. Wish you all the very best for CAT. Hope to see you again when we come up with the analysis for iCAT18. Please take all the mocks, prepare well and do well in CAT. You can subscribe to more videos of this type on our official channel. Thank you and wish you all the best.